Okay, this is Math 2, Unit 7, Lesson 3b, looking at the inverse trig ratios here. Before we begin, let's just kind of review what those look like from your notes from your class, hopefully, or from your textbook. The sine inverse ratio, we set that up and it looks like sin with a -1 times my opposite over my hypotenuse, and that will give me whatever angle I'm looking for here. The idea with the inverse is that now we have the side lengths, but I don't know what that angle is. That's what the inverse trig function is going to help us determine. So it's going to give me a degree here. My cosine, inverse cosine, we have SOH, remember these before? SOH, CAH, TOA, same letters. So cosine of -1 or inverse is going to be with the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And then my tangent one is opposite over adjacent. And these will be the inverse trig ratios I'll use to determine the missing angle measurements in the equations that we're going to look at today. So looking at number 13, if this is my angle, I can see that I don't have an opposite, so I don't want to use one with an O in it. But what I do have is I have a hypotenuse, here's my H, and I have an adjacent. So looking at the cosine one, I can tell that I'm going to use cosine -1, and I'm going to have my adjacent, which is 11, and I have my hypotenuse 12. That's my setup. That will equal what I'm looking for. That's my x value. Alright, so again, how I set up, I look at the angle that I'm looking for. I can just look across from it and decide that's opposite. I have nothing for it. But what I do have, I have an adjacent and I have hypotenuse, so it tells me let's use the cosine. Okay, so to solve this one, we have to use our calculator. And this one's a little different here. It's not really hard. Sorry, it's hard to see with my phone. What you want to do on your calculator is, we had over here, we know it's 11 over 12. We can do 11 divided by 12, 11 divided by 12, and get a number. Okay, we have 0.916, but that's not my answer. I need to find the inverse cosine of that. So when I look on my iPhone, I have cosine there. It's not what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and press the second button. When I press second, now I get the cosine -1. So I press it, and it tells me that x is equal to 23.55. That equals x. Well, I can't really have an angle measurement of 23.555. I mean, I could, but what we want to do is round up to the nearest whole number, or round down, depending on what it's going to be. So 23.5 rounds to 24 degrees is my value of x. Okay, so it's part of all. The big thing is just how do you set it up. Looking at number 14, same idea. This is the angle. So this time they gave me an opposite, and I can tell that I have a hypotenuse. Because I have an opposite and a hypotenuse, I'm going to use the sine, inverse sine function. Because sine 1 will be 17 opposite over hypotenuse 18, and that will give me my missing x value. Because sine is opposite over hypotenuse, I have opposite over hypotenuse. So again, using the calculator, I still have it at the second value. So I do 17 divided by 18 equals 0.9444, and I'm going to do the sine, and I end up with 70.8, which rounds up to 71 degrees, is what x equals to. Okay, getting the idea? It's really just plugging in the formula there. Let's look at one more. Okay, number 17. 17 may look a little messier, but it's really not. It's not that bad. Okay, let's take a look at, I want to go ahead and solve for w first of all. That's what I want to do, because I'm going to do the little triangle first. So the first thing I want to look at is, can I figure out what this little w value is going to be in this first triangle? Sure I can. I can use what I already do know from the previous lesson. I have an angle here of 70. I have an opposite, and I have an adjacent value for w. I don't know hypotenuse, but I don't need it right now. So when I have opposite and adjacent, that becomes the tangent of the number, and I have the angle here, is equal to opposite over adjacent, which is W. If I cross multiply, we have tangent of 70 times W equals 16. I divide both sides by tangent of 70 to get the W by itself. And W is going to equal 16 divided by tangent of 70. Okay, so let's do that with a calculator. I have to go back and take it off the second function. So let's do 16 divided by, and I plug in my number, 70, and I push the tangent button. And we have W equals 2.74. I think it's something not quite right there. 2.74? Let me see real quick. Double check. Something's not right. 16 divided by tangent of 70 equals. Sorry, I didn't press equals. That's what it was. So 16 divided by tangent of 70 is 5.82. Or I can leave it at 5.8. That's my W value. So I have that equal to W. Alright, it's getting somewhere. I still have this X value that I don't know what it is. But at least I only have one variable down the bottom. 5.8. So I could look at the larger triangle now to figure out what X is going to be. And in this case, I have, again, looking at this one, I have an opposite, and I have a, I have my adjacent just a little different. So my tangent of 41 is going to be equal to my opposite, which is still 16, over X plus 5.8. So it's just a little messier is what it comes down to, more than anything else. It's just like, oh, that's not a very nice problem. And there's not much we can do about it, really. So a couple things I could do. I could begin by saying, well, let's go ahead and cross multiply. And I end up with a problem that, I'm going to move it over here. Sorry, I'm just sliding over. I end up with the tangent of 41 times X plus 5.8 equals 16. And that becomes my new equation when I cross multiply this and that. So tangent of 41 times X becomes tangent 41X. And that's going to be plus, I'm going to go ahead and figure this out here, because tangent of 41 is about 8.7. So I'm going to go ahead and change this here to 0.87x plus 0.87, let's write down 0.87 times 5.8. We get 5.0. Is it there? Yeah, 0.046 equals 16. And let's go ahead and get the x by itself. So we'll do 16 minus 5.046. So 0.87x is going to equal 10.954. Divide both sides by 0.87. We find that x is somewhere near 12.59. And again, we want to get to the nearest tenth, nearest degree. So x is going to equal 12.6. This is 12.6. That's it. So we just found the missing sides. I didn't use the stuff from today's inverse lesson because it gave me the angles. So I had to use yesterday's from 7.3a. If I look at number 16, because I have a missing angle measurement, on this one here, which I probably should have done looking at it now, I would use the inverse trig functions here to solve for that one. I probably have to then, yeah, anyways. So I'd use the inverse here, and then I'd use a regular one to find the W. So you have to be able to play with those to figure that out, but that's the general idea. Again, going back to making sure you remember what the inverse trig ratios are going to be, and you know what the original trig ratios are going to be. If you can remember these ones here, and set up with the SOHCAHTOA, and the inverse, which is still SOHCAHTOA, you'll be alright.